Have you ever wondered what noble ladies in the Middle Ages truly longed for when the heavy doors of their castles closed behind them? Before we dive into the secrets whispered in candlelit chambers, take a moment, yes, right now, to press that like button. Tell me in the comments where you are watching from, and subscribe to this channel so you won't miss the stories that blend history, mystery, and a dash of imagination. Ready? Then let us step through those ancient halls together. You picture a lady in a flowing gown, golden embroidery catching the dim firelight, her jeweled crown balanced with poise. To the world she appears satisfied, admired, untouchable, but within her heart waves of desire crash like a hidden sea. These women, often married off at 14 or 15, did not dream only of silks and banquets. They craved something far deeper: freedom, intimacy, knowledge, and sometimes the thrill of breaking the very rules that defined their existence. Imagine walking through a stone corridor where tapestries hide not just drafts of cold wind, but the hushed voices of forbidden conversations. A noble lady might smile politely at visiting knights, yet secretly wonder, what would it be like to choose love instead of duty? Her painted lips curve upward, but behind that smile lies a storm. It is easy to assume that these women lived lives of luxury alone. Yes, they had maids, perfumes, music, and velvet cushions, but each jewel-encrusted ring was also a chain. Their marriages were contracts, their children guarantees of alliance. And so, many of them developed a hidden language of longing, secret glances across the banquet table, carefully folded letters slipped into a servant's hand, or songs sung softly at night that carried double meanings only a chosen ear could understand. One might laugh now and say, come on, surely they were content with all that wealth. But let me ask you, if you had everything material yet no power over your own choices, would you be content, or would you burn inside for something beyond your reach? Some ladies whispered prayers in private chapels, not for salvation but for courage, to challenge their place in the rigid hierarchy. Others gazed out through arrow-slit windows, their eyes searching the horizon as though the wind itself might carry them to another life. And then there were those who dared to cross the invisible line, who risked scandal, punishment, even death for the taste of freedom or forbidden love. Tonight, as you close your eyes and listen, think of the noble lady not as a distant figure in dusty manuscripts, but as a woman who might have laughed at jokes, feared betrayal, longed to be kissed in secret, or simply wished for an hour to walk barefoot through a meadow without eyes watching her every step. And remember, these hidden longings are not so far from our own. The real question is, if you were in her place dressed in silk but bound by duty, what would you truly desire? Close your eyes for a moment and imagine the thick walls of a medieval castle. Cold, gray stones rise above you, towering like silent guards. To outsiders, those walls mean safety, wealth, and prestige. But if you lived inside as a noble lady, those same walls could feel less like protection and more like a cage lined with silk. You might think, wait, how could a woman surrounded by servants, jewelry, and fine meals ever feel trapped? But let us pause. Freedom is not measured by how soft your bed is, or how many dishes appear on your silver platter. It is measured by whether you can walk out the door without someone questioning your every step. And for many noble women, every step was scripted. In public, noble ladies were expected to glide gracefully, heads bowed, voices soft. But behind closed doors, many longed to kick off their tight shoes, run across the grass, feel mud on their feet, or laugh loudly without being shushed. Imagine being told every laugh, every word, even every glance must be proper. Wouldn't you itch for something wild, something unapproved? Some secretly watched the peasants in the fields with envy, not because they wanted to be poor, but because peasants had a kind of freedom. They could choose their companions, whisper their desires openly, even dance under the moon without fear of scandal. In contrast, noble ladies had to ask permission for everything, even for the smallest freedoms, like reading a book or visiting a chapel outside their estate. Now picture yourself in their shoes. You are told who you will marry, what you will wear, when you will smile, and even how many children you must produce. Your life is drawn on parchment like a blueprint, leaving little room for choice. Wouldn't you too dream of breaking through the stone walls? There are legends of ladies who tried. One might disguise herself as a peasant girl, sneaking out to wander the market. Another might bribe her maid to switch clothes, just to ride a horse beyond the castle gates. Sometimes these adventures ended in laughter, sometimes in disaster. Can you imagine the scandal if a noble lady were recognized buying roasted chestnuts in the street? In today's terms, it would be like catching a celebrity at Walmart in their pajamas. It would spread like wildfire. And yet, those tiny moments of rebellion fed their souls. The freedom to choose even the smallest act, what to eat, who to speak with, where to walk, was priceless. For some, the mere thought of slipping out after midnight to breathe unguarded air was enough to keep them sane. But freedom was more than sneaking out. It was also the freedom to think. Many noble ladies craved a voice in decisions about their lands or households. They watched their husbands dictate policies, manage armies, or sign treaties, and secretly wondered, why not me? These thoughts, of course, had to remain silent. In a world where women could be dismissed or even punished for stepping out of line, daring to dream of power was already an act of defiance. So when you hear tales of these women, do not imagine only pearls and crowns. Imagine the restless tapping of fingers on a windowsill, the long sighs in empty chambers, the yearning for a life written not by duty but by choice. If you were in that stone castle, would you accept the gilded cage, or would you start looking for cracks in the wall, waiting for the right night to slip out into the unknown? Picture this. The grand hall of a medieval castle, lit by torches, filled with laughter, music, and the clinking of goblets. Everyone seems joyful. Yet one pair of eyes, hers, keeps glancing toward someone she should not. Perhaps it is the knight seated 3 rows away, his armor glistening even in the firelight. Perhaps it is the traveling minstrel, plucking a lute with fingers that stir not just strings but her restless heart. And perhaps, just perhaps, it is the young priest who has sworn vows of chastity, but cannot stop meeting her gaze. Love for noble ladies was rarely about choice. Marriages were contracts, sealed with ink and bloodline, not affection. You might find yourself at 15 pledged to a man twice your age. You might meet him on your wedding day, exchange vows, and then spend a lifetime as his obedient consort. So it is no wonder whispers of forbidden love fluttered like moths around candle flames. Can you imagine it? Letters folded so tightly they fit inside the hollow of a candlestick. Secret meetings in gardens where hedges became shields against watchful eyes. A single touch, a hand brushing against another, could ignite a wildfire of desire because it was stolen, because it was not allowed. And here's the funny part. People today might laugh at the drama. Really, risking everything just for a kiss, but in a world where women had so little control. That kiss was not just affection, it was rebellion. It was proof that she could choose something, even if just for one stolen night. Think of it as the medieval version of sneaking out after curfew, except instead of being grounded, you could lose your title, your fortune, or even your head. Some stories tell of ladies who disguised themselves, slipping into taverns dressed as commoners. Imagine the shock if someone recognized her royal ring while she was sipping ale. Others describe love poems hidden inside hymn books, read during Mass with a face of holy devotion while the heart raced with unholy passion. But not all ended in romance. Many tales turned dark, women caught and punished, men exiled or executed, reputations destroyed. The castle walls were not just stone. They were iron bars on their choices. And still, despite the risks, some dared. Because to live without love felt like a slower death than any punishment. Now pause and ask yourself, if you were one of those noble ladies, and love came knocking at the wrong door, would you open it? Would you risk the scandal, the shame, the danger for a chance at something real? Or would you swallow your longing, smile at banquets, and let your heart wither behind velvet curtains? Imagine being told that books are not for you, that the ink on the parchment is meant only for monks, priests, and men of science, not for your delicate hands, that your job is to embroider, host banquets, and bear children. While the secrets of the universe remain locked away in dusty libraries you can never enter. For noble ladies of the Middle Ages, knowledge was one of the most forbidden fruits, and just like Eve in the garden, many of them could not resist the temptation. Some were lucky. If born into a progressive family, they might have tutors who taught them to read Latin, to recite poetry, even to dabble in philosophy. But for many, the hunger for knowledge had to be fed in whispers and shadows. Imagine sneaking a book from your husband's study, hiding it beneath cushions, and reading by candlelight when the castle slept. One wrong move and you could be accused of overstepping, of arrogance, or even of witchcraft. Yes, witchcraft. In a world where women with too many questions were labeled dangerous, the line between scholar and sorceress was perilously thin. Some noble women did embrace the mystical arts, studying astrology, alchemy, and herbal medicine. To them, the stars were not just pinpricks of light, but maps of destiny. The bubbling cauldron was not a witch's toy, but a laboratory. Now pause for a second. If you lived then, would not you want answers too? Wouldn't you wonder why the plague struck without mercy? Why the stars seemed to dance across the heavens? Why childbirth was so risky? In a society that gave you no voice in politics, knowledge was your one path to power, power over your own mind. And there is a humorous side to this too. Picture a lady sneaking into the chapel library, nervously flipping pages, when suddenly her maid sneezes so loudly it echoes through the stone hall. She slams the book shut, pretending she was praying. Imagine explaining that to a suspicious priest, but make no mistake, these women were brave. To pursue knowledge was to rebel, and their curiosity planted seeds that would grow for centuries. Some inspired their children to value learning, passing the flame from generation to generation. Others left traces, letters, notes, even coded messages that survive in archives today, proof of minds too restless to stay silent. Knowledge was their secret lover, their forbidden feast, their private rebellion against a world that told them to stay quiet. And even if their names faded from history, their hunger for learning still echoes whenever we open a book. So let me ask you, if you were that noble lady, forbidden from studying, would you accept the ignorance imposed on you? Or would you risk the shadows, the whispers, and the accusations just to taste the sweetness of a single page? Think about the mirror if you had one. In the Middle Ages, mirrors were rare treasures, polished metal or small pieces of glass that only the wealthy could afford. For noble ladies, to catch their reflection was both a delight and a curse, because staring back was not just a face adorned with jewels, but a reminder, beauty fades and time shows no mercy. In a society where a woman's value was tied to her youth and appearance, the pressure was immense. Wrinkles were not simply lines, they were cracks in status. A dull complexion was not just skin, it was a warning sign that whispers might begin. She is no longer desirable. Imagine living every day under that invisible scrutiny. So what did these noble ladies do? They fought a silent battle with age using every tool they could find. Some smeared their faces with mixtures of honey and milk, believing it kept the skin soft. Others tried lead-based powders, yes, lead, to appear pale and noble. Of course, the irony is that while they looked flawless, the poison seeped into their bodies, slowly harming them. Beauty, literally deadly. Hair was another obsession. Long golden locks symbolized youth and purity. Some women bleached their hair with mixtures that stung the scalp. Others covered thinning hair with elaborate headdresses. If you picture those tall cone-shaped hennons, the princess hats you see in fairy tales, they were not just fashion, they were sometimes disguises for what time had stolen. And then there were the charms, the whispers of magic. Some ladies carried small talismans said to preserve youth, or prayed fervently to saints known for miracles of beauty. Herbal concoctions promised to keep cheeks rosy, lips full. Did they work? Probably not. But hope itself was a powerful potion. Now here's where the story gets human and funny. Imagine a lady applying her secret cream late at night only for her maid to sneeze and knock the jar into the fire. Or picture a noble woman carefully painting her face white, only to step outside and immediately start sweating, leaving streaks like melting candle wax. Even nobility had their makeup fails. But beneath the humor lay fear. Fear of being replaced by a younger bride. Fear of losing influence at court. Fear of becoming invisible in a world that adored beauty but ignored wisdom. And so their real longing was not just to be admired, but to be remembered beyond their looks. Think of it. If you lived then, would you accept that your worth was measured only by the curve of your cheek or the brightness of your eyes? Or would you rebel, demanding to be valued for your mind, your spirit, your courage? The truth is, beauty fades, but the hunger to defy time never did. These noble ladies waged that quiet war daily, caught between powders, prayers, and the ticking of the medieval clock. Close your eyes and listen. Hear the faint sound of lutes and drums echoing down the stone halls. Imagine candles flickering in golden chandeliers. Shadows dancing across tapestries of battles and saints. Tonight is not about politics or alliances. It is about music, wine, and the fleeting chance to forget the weight of duty. For noble ladies, festivals and entertainments were more than simple diversions. They were moments of escape, a feast, a masquerade ball. A traveling troupe of performers, these were windows into a world where laughter was allowed to be loud, where glances could be stolen under the cover of masks, and where, for a few hours, the walls of the castle melted away. Picture a masquerade, jeweled masks glittering, gowns sweeping across polished floors. Behind every mask was a secret. Who was the knight? The minstrel, or perhaps even the rival lady hiding in plain sight. For noblewomen, these nights were thrilling precisely because they blurred the rules. With their identities disguised, they could flirt, tease, or even speak bold words that daylight would never permit. And it was not only balls. Traveling entertainers, jugglers, puppeteers, acrobats brought color to their gray days. Imagine a noble lady, stiff with etiquette, suddenly laughing until tears rolled down her cheeks as a jester made a crude joke about knights losing their pants in battle. Humor was risky, even scandalous, but it was also liberating. Think of the music. Songs of love, adventure, and tragedy filled the air. For some women, these songs were not just melodies, they were mirrors of their own desires. A ballad about forbidden love, sung by a wandering bard, could strike directly into the heart of a lady who longed for more than her arranged marriage. The music gave voice to what she could never say aloud. Now let us add a touch of humor. Picture a noblewoman twirling too fast during a dance, tripping over her heavy skirts, and tumbling into the arms of an unsuspecting knight. Or a lady sneaking extra wine, giggling uncontrollably as her crown slips sideways. Even in castles, party fails existed, and maybe, just maybe, those moments were cherished most because they felt real. Entertainment was more than laughter, it was survival. In a life of rigid expectations, these celebrations kept spirits alive. For noble ladies, the longing was not simply for fun, but for freedom disguised as festivity. A chance to be human, to be imperfect, to feel joy without consequence. So ask yourself, if you lived then, dressed in silks and bound by duty, would you crave these nights of music and masks? Would you seize the fleeting hours when the world allowed you to be playful, daring, even reckless? Or would you stand on the edge of the dance floor, watching, longing, waiting for courage to pull you in? Imagine standing beside a king, your gown trailing behind you, jewels sparkling in torchlight, yet knowing every decision that shapes the fate of your land is made without your voice. You may whisper advice, you may smile at foreign envoys, but on parchment and in councils your name never appears. For many noble ladies, this silence was unbearable. Power in the Middle Ages was written as a masculine story: kings, dukes, bishops, warriors. But behind those thrones stood women who longed not just to decorate power, but to wield it. Some succeeded. Think of Eleanor of Aquitaine, who commanded armies, influenced crusades, and played political chess better than many men. But for most, power remained a dream pressed into the shadows of their chambers. Still, noble ladies were not naive. They knew the art of influence. Over a shared meal, a gentle word could steer a husband's decision. A lullaby sung to a son could plant ambition in the air too. Come. Behind closed doors, politics often wore a woman's perfume. Yet these subtle victories were not enough for some. They craved open authority. Their names inscribed on treaties, their seals pressed into wax alongside kings. Picture this, a lady watching as soldiers march past her castle. Her heart pounds not with fear, but with envy. She imagines herself in armor, issuing commands, her banner snapping in the wind. The question that gnawed at her: why must she only wave goodbye while men claim the glory? And there is humor even here. Imagine a council meeting, all grim-faced men debating taxes, while a lady listening behind a curtain rolls her eyes. If she could, she would probably mutter, "Honestly, if you stopped wasting money on golden goblets, we would not need more taxes." But of course, her sharp tongue had to stay hidden. For some, ambition became dangerous. Rumors of women plotting, scheming, or poisoning circulated often. Sometimes true, often exaggerated. These tales reveal society's fear. A woman with power was unnatural, threatening, almost monstrous. Yet does not that tell us how badly they longed for control? Now let us turn it back to you. If you were born into nobility, told that your destiny was only to host banquets and birth heirs, would you accept it? Or would you secretly crave the council chamber, the sword, the crown? In truth, many noble ladies lived in that silent tension, outwardly obedient, inwardly ambitious. Their longing was not always for romance or beauty, sometimes it was for the throne itself. The clash of steel rings in your ears, smoke rises from burning villages, horses scream, men shout, and banners whip in the wind. Now imagine. You are not a knight in shining armor, but a noble lady, wrapped in velvet and lace, suddenly thrust into the chaos of battle. What would you do? For most noble women, war was something seen from a balcony or whispered about in letters. They waved farewell to husbands and sons, prayed for their safe return, and kept the estates running in their absence. But sometimes war came to their very doorstep. Castles were besieged, villages burned, and the line between spectator and participant blurred. There are stories, half history, half legend, of ladies who donned armor and led defenses when no man remained. Picture a countess climbing the battlements, hair tucked beneath a helmet, rallying peasants with the same voice she once used to sing lullabies, or a duchess overseeing the pouring of boiling oil, her jeweled hands suddenly stained with war. For a moment the roles reversed. Women became commanders, not ornaments. Now let us turn the lens to imagination. If you were a noble lady caught in such a night, your castle under siege, flames flickering on the horizon, how would you survive? Would you gather courage and wield a blade? Would you disguise yourself and slip out through secret tunnels? Or would you negotiate, using wit as your weapon? It is easy to romanticize, but the fear was real. One misstep and the enemy could capture you, ransom you, or worse. Yet many ladies endured it with a strength rarely told in chronicles. They learned to read maps, to organize supplies, even to command small garrisons. War made their hidden abilities visible, even if only briefly. And of course, there were moments that bordered on absurd. Imagine a lady shouting orders from the tower, only for her crown to slip and fall onto a soldier's head. Or a noblewoman attempting to swing a sword, only to find it heavier than expected, stumbling into a barrel of ale. Even in chaos, humanity finds humor. But beneath the humor lay a deeper truth. Many noble ladies secretly longed to take part, not as victims but as leaders. Watching men ride off to glory while they stayed behind was a frustration that burned. Some must have wondered, if I had been born a man, would I have commanded armies? Would I have carved my name into history? So ask yourself. If the battlefield came to your door, would you hide in the chapel and pray? Or would you stand on the walls, sword in hand, daring fate to test you? In the quiet of a castle chapel, candle flames flicker against cold stone walls. A noble lady kneels, her hands clasped, lips moving in whispered prayers. To anyone watching, it looks like simple devotion, but inside her heart asks questions she dares not speak aloud, questions about life, destiny, freedom, and power. For many noble women, spirituality was more than duty, it was longing. Religion shaped every aspect of their lives, but within its rituals they sought something deeper. They prayed not just for salvation, but for strength, love, or answers to mysteries that haunted them. Some turned to saints, asking for beauty, fertility, or protection. Others sought visions in dreams, believing messages from heaven could guide them. And some, restless with the limits of the church, whispered to astrologers, alchemists, and wise women. They wanted to know not only what God willed, but what the stars whispered, what herbs might heal, what charms might bend fate. Imagine a noble lady peeking nervously as a local healer lays out herbs and mutters incantations. She nods gravely, then slips a small charm into her sleeve, praying it will protect her child. Or picture her staring through a narrow window at the night sky, tracing constellations with her finger, wondering if the heavens had written her destiny long before she was born. For some, this longing turned into quiet rebellion. If the church told them to accept their lot, they still searched for secret ways to shape it. Their faith was not blind, it was desperate, imaginative, alive. And here's the irony. While men debated theology in grand halls, women were often the ones keeping spiritual life alive at home. They led prayers for families, told stories of saints to children, and kept faith burning in times of war and plague. Their spirituality was practical, personal, and deeply human. Of course, there were comic moments too. Imagine a lady trying to fast for Lent but sneaking bites of sweet pastries, whispering, "Forgive me, Lord, but they baked them too well." Or another who mistakes a shooting star for a heavenly sign, only to realize it was just a falling ember from the fireplace. Even faith had its light-hearted side. Yet beneath the humor, the longing was serious. These women wanted assurance that they were seen, that their struggles mattered, that destiny was not just a chain. Spirituality gave them hope where politics and society gave them none. Now pause and ask yourself, If you were her, kneeling in a candlelit chapel, would you accept every word the priest preached, or would you search for your own connection to the divine, even if it meant crossing into the mysterious, the mystical, the forbidden? Picture a noble lady leaning close to her maid, whispering in hushed tones, "Find me the herb that makes him love me again," in a world where marriages were arranged, where affection was often absent. Many women turned to secrets not written in prayer books but in recipes whispered from mother to daughter. Love potions, charms, and bedroom secrets were not just fantasy, they were survival. A lady might slip a drop of honey mixed with rare herbs into her husband's wine, hoping it stirred his heart. Others sought aphrodisiacs, from exotic spices to strange concoctions of animal parts, believing passion could be brewed in a cauldron. But it was not only about keeping a husband faithful. Some longed for the thrill of passion itself. Imagine a woman trapped in a cold marriage, yearning not for titles or lands, but for the warmth of desire. For her, a potion was more than superstition, it was hope in liquid form. Of course, these practices carried risk. If discovered, a woman could be accused of witchcraft, her desire twisted into evidence of sin, yet the secrecy only made it more alluring. Hidden bottles, coded recipes, and midnight whispers became part of an underground female knowledge, shared in kitchens and gardens rather than libraries and courts. And here's where humor creeps in. Picture a noble lady slipping what she thinks is a love potion into a goblet, only to realize it was actually a strong laxative. Or imagine her applying a strange salve to enhance beauty, only to wake up with her skin dyed green from herbs, even in their desperation. Mistakes made them laugh or cry in private. But beneath the laughter was something deeper. The longing to be desired, to feel alive. These women did not just want duty, they wanted fire. They wanted to know that their bodies and hearts mattered, that they could stir passion as much as they stirred soup in the kitchen. And if you place yourself in their shoes, the question becomes personal. If your life was ruled by duty, if love was not guaranteed, would you risk whispers of sorcery to secure affection? Would you dare to play with powders, potions, and charms, just for a chance at something real in a world where everything else was arranged? For many noble ladies, the answer was yes, because in the end, what they longed for was not only loyalty, but desire itself. Close your eyes and imagine the weight of a castle key in your hand. Beyond the gates lies a bustling town, markets filled with spices, streets echoing with laughter, jugglers tossing knives under the sun. Yet as a noble lady, you are expected to remain behind stone walls, your world limited to chambers and courtyards. No wonder adventure itself became a forbidden dream. For many noble women, the longing to explore was constant. They heard stories from travelers, deserts stretching into eternity, ships braving storms, cities with golden roofs. Each tale was a spark, igniting curiosity they could not quench. How must it have felt, listening to a knight describe distant lands while knowing you might never step beyond your own province? Some dared anyway. Legends speak of ladies disguising themselves as commoners slipping out to wander towns, a cloak pulled low, a hood hiding jewels. Suddenly, the lady of the castle became just another face in the crowd. Imagine the thrill of buying roasted nuts from a vendor, laughing freely without courtiers watching. For a few stolen hours, they were not my lady, they were simply a woman. And then there were the dreamers. Some wrote secret journals filled with maps sketched from imagination, tracing rivers and mountains they would never see. Others collected seashells brought by merchants, pressing them to their ears, pretending to hear the ocean. Even without leaving, their minds traveled. Of course, adventure had risks. Being recognized could mean scandal. A single slip of the hood, a glimpse of a ring, and whispers could spread like wildfire. And journeys beyond the castle walls could be dangerous. Bandits, disease, or even suspicion of witchcraft followed women who strayed too far from their place. Yet humor finds a way. Picture a noble lady sneaking into a fair, only to have her elaborate gown accidentally step in a mud puddle, splashing peasants nearby. Or imagine her bargaining poorly, paying 10 times too much for bread because she did not know the price of anything outside her kitchens. Adventure could be embarrassing, but it was also exhilarating. At its core, the longing was not just for travel. It was for choice, for unpredictability, for stories to tell that were not written by men. Noble ladies did not only want to watch minstrels sing about heroes, they wanted to be the heroes of their own tales. Now ask yourself if you lived then. and your life was carved into stone by duty. Would you risk a disguise for a single taste of freedom? Would you step into the marketplace, heart pounding, to feel alive? Or would you stay safe in your tower, forever wondering what the world beyond smelled, sounded, and tasted like? Now let us play a little game of imagination. Picture a noble lady, seated by the fire, holding not embroidery but a glowing screen, with a flick of her jeweled finger. She swipes left, swipes right. Welcome to the question no historian dared to ask: what if Tinder existed in the Middle Ages? Swipe left, an aging duke, wealthy but already missing half his teeth. His profile boasts of land and titles, but the lady mutters, "No thank you. I have got enough castles to dust already." Swipe right, a handsome knight, armor shining, promising loyalty and adventure. But wait, his bio says, frequently away on crusades, may not text back for years. Tempting but exhausting. Swipe left again, a priest who somehow ended up on the app, looking for a spiritual connection. She laughs so hard her crown nearly slips. It is funny, yes, but hidden in the humor is truth. Noble ladies often had no choice in love. If Tinder had existed, perhaps they would have cherished the ability to decide, even in small ways, who deserved their affection. A single swipe would have felt like rebellion, a victory of choice. Imagine the chat messages. Your castle or mine? Sorry, can't tonight, I am besieged. Do you like long walks by the moat? And let us not forget the medieval equivalent of catfishing. A profile shows a gallant young knight, but when she meets him, he is a balding squire with borrowed armor. Even in fantasy, disappointment lurks, but laughter aside, this thought experiment reveals something important: the longing for agency, to choose, to flirt without fear, to feel desired not because of alliances, but because someone genuinely swiped right. Picture her giggling with her ladies-in-waiting as they swipe together, debating profiles. One prefers knights, another swoons for poets, while she herself wonders if the minstrel's calloused hands might strum more than just strings. In that moment, laughter fills the chamber, and for once, love feels like a game she can play. Now let us ask you, if you lived in the Middle Ages, would you swipe right on the knight with adventure in his eyes, even if he might vanish on crusade? Or would you swipe left and hope for someone steady, perhaps a scholar with ink-stained fingers? In a world without choice, even an imaginary app offers freedom. Because in the end, what these ladies longed for was simple: the right to decide who touched their heart. And maybe, just maybe, that is the one feature of Tinder they would have treasured most. Picture the family chronicle written by monks with careful hands. Line after line, names of men, lords, heirs, warriors, kings. Women appear only in passing. His wife, the mother of his son. For noble ladies, this silence was perhaps the greatest wound. They longed not to vanish into footnotes, but to be remembered. Imagine living your whole life in silk and ceremony, only for history to erase you. Castles you decorated, alliances you preserved, even battles you may have helped guide, left unrecorded because you were a woman. For many, the hunger was not just for love or freedom, but for permanence. They wanted their voices carved into the story of time. Some tried through patronage. They commissioned chapels, funded manuscripts, built bridges. Every stone carried their names, even if ink refused to. Others turned to letters, diaries, poems. A few survive today, words written by women who refused to be silent, who wanted someone, anyone, in the future, to know they existed. And sometimes their legacy slipped through in art. A painting might capture more than a face, it whispered ambition. A tapestry might hide symbols only insiders understood. In these subtle ways, noble ladies inscribed themselves into history, not through crowns but through creativity. Now, think of the irony. A knight could die in battle at 20, and still have a song written about him. A lady might live to 70, guiding generations, and still be reduced to a single line: his spouse. No wonder their longing burned. Here's a humorous image. Imagine a noble lady bribing a monk to make her description more flattering in the family record. "Please, Brother Thomas, write that I was pious, beautiful, and wise." The monk sighs, dipping his quill. "Fine, but wisdom costs extra ink." Even humor reveals the truth. They wanted to be seen, not erased. At its core, the desire was human: to matter, to outlive flesh and fabric, to echo through centuries. Some succeeded: Eleanor of Aquitaine, Hildegard of Bingen, queens whose names still resonate, but countless others remain shadows, their stories untold. So let me ask you, if you lived then, would you accept anonymity, or would you fight to leave your mark? perhaps through words, deeds, or whispered rebellions. Because in the end, the deepest longing of many noble ladies was not to be adored in their lifetime, but to be remembered after it. Imagine living in a time when even the simplest truths about the human body were cloaked in mystery. Illness was explained by humors, blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. If you sneezed too often, someone might say your balance was off. If you grew pale, whispers of curses or sin spread quickly. For noble ladies, curiosity about their own bodies was both natural and forbidden. Most women were expected to know only practical remedies, which herbs soothed a cough, which teas eased cramps, which poultices healed wounds. But some wanted more. They longed to understand why fevers raged, why childbirth was perilous, why life itself seemed so fragile. Childbirth especially haunted noble women. Each pregnancy was a gamble, and many did not survive. Imagine the quiet fear of a lady, her chamber filled with midwives and candles. As prayers mixed with screams, knowledge about anatomy and hygiene could have saved countless lives, but those secrets were often locked away in universities and monasteries, off limits to women. So some turned to what knowledge they could find: old herbals with strange illustrations, recipes passed down in whispers, advice from wise women accused of witchcraft. They experimented, mixed, prayed. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes it was deadly. A potion meant to ease pain could poison. A charm meant to protect a baby could do nothing at all. And yet, curiosity persisted. Some noble ladies quietly collected medical texts in Latin, asking tutors or confessors to translate. Others conducted experiments in their kitchens, treating servants or peasants as patients. In their own way, they became scientists of the shadows. Now imagine the humor in this. A lady brewing what she thinks is a healing tonic, only to create the medieval equivalent of bad soup, so bitter even her dog refuses to drink it. Or a noblewoman insisting that standing on one leg during a full moon would cure headaches. Desperation mixed with creativity often produced bizarre remedies. But underneath the comedy was real bravery. These women faced illness, childbirth, and death more directly than men in councils ever did. Their longing was simple yet profound: to understand their own bodies, to gain control over the mysteries that governed their lives. And so, the question falls to you. If you were a noble lady, denied access to doctors and books, would you trust in herbs and charms? Or would you search for forbidden knowledge, risking suspicion, just to grasp even a fragment of truth about the human body? Imagine the grand hall filled with laughter and music. On the surface, everything sparkles: jewels, golden goblets, embroidered gowns. But behind the painted smiles of noble ladies, shadows linger, because beneath the silks and ceremonies, fear was a constant companion. What did they fear? Many things. Some fears were universal: disease, betrayal, loneliness. Others were uniquely theirs: the fear of childbirth, the fear of being replaced, the fear of scandal. Each one carried its own weight, pressing down quietly, never acknowledged aloud. Childbirth stood at the top of this silent list. Every noble lady knew someone, a sister, a cousin, a friend, who had not survived. Each pregnancy was not only hope for an heir but a gamble with death. Imagine lying in bed, midwives bustling, prayers whispered, while the thought lingers: will I see the sunrise again? That fear haunted every noblewoman. Then there was the fear of betrayal. Husbands often strayed, seeking mistresses among servants or courtiers. Whispers spread quickly in castles, and humiliation was sharper than swords. Many ladies feared not just losing love but losing influence, for in a world where their power was tied to their husband's favor, betrayal could strip them of everything. And let us not forget the fear of scandal. One rumor, true or not, could destroy a lady's reputation. A wrong glance at a knight, a letter misinterpreted. Even laughter at the wrong time could spark whispers that spiraled into disgrace. Imagine living where every word and movement might be judged harshly, echoing through halls like ghostly gossip. Of course, some fears were almost absurd in hindsight. A lady might panic at a solar eclipse, believing it meant doom. Others feared demons in dark corners, or that a spilled cup of wine foretold tragedy. Medieval superstition wove fear into daily life, turning accidents into omens. Now picture the humor in these fears. A noble lady gasps at an owl hooting outside her window, convinced it is a demon, only for her maid to laugh and shoo it away. Or another wakes screaming from a nightmare, demanding her chamber be exorcised, only to find the evil spirit was just the cat knocking over a candlestick. Even fear had its ridiculous moments. But beneath the laughter was truth. Fear shaped their lives. It kept them cautious, watchful, restrained, and yet it also revealed their humanity. These women were not stone statues in portraits. They were human beings trembling in the night, worrying about their children, their futures, their souls. So let me ask you, if you were her, draped in velvet but trembling inside, would you admit your fears? Or would you wear the mask of composure, smiling at banquets while shadows gnawed at your heart? The castle sleeps. Torches dim, guards yawn at their posts, and silence falls across stone corridors. But behind one heavy wooden door, laughter breaks the night. A group of noble ladies gather. No men, no priests, no watchful eyes, only women, finally free to speak their truth. These secret gatherings were not written into chronicles. Yet they existed in whispers. In these circles, women laughed, cried, gossiped, and confessed longings they could never share at banquets. It was here that noble ladies dropped their masks. Picture them sitting on cushions, hair loosened, gowns exchanged for lighter robes. A jug of wine passes hand to hand. One lady jokes about her husband snoring. Another imitates the pompous walk of a bishop. Laughter fills the room, not the polite giggles of court, but loud, unrestrained human laughter. They talked of fears, of childbirth, of love and betrayal. They shared recipes for beauty creams, secret charms, even silly superstitions. Some sang songs banned in chapels, their voices rising into rebellious harmony. Others told ghost stories, making the youngest gasp and cling to her neighbor. In those moments they were not noble ladies, they were simply women, alive and unguarded. And sometimes these gatherings turned serious. They spoke of injustices, of the roles forced upon them. A widow might warn others of the dangers of greedy guardians. A young bride might confess her terror of her new husband. Advice, comfort, and solidarity flowed like the wine they poured. There is a humorous side too. Imagine a lady so tipsy she tries to juggle apples, only to send one rolling under the bed, or another pretending to read fortunes with spilled wine, declaring dramatically, "You will soon meet a man who smells strongly of garlic." The room erupts in laughter. But beneath the games and jokes was something powerful: community. In a world that isolated them, these gatherings were lifelines for noble ladies. The true longing was not just for freedom from men, but for the company of women who understood their struggles. Now place yourself in that hidden room. The fire crackles, the wine warms your cheeks, and for the first time you do not have to be perfect. Would you share your fears, your dreams? Would you laugh until tears blurred your vision, knowing tomorrow you would wear your mask again? Because in those midnight circles, noble ladies tasted a freedom rarer than gold, the freedom to be themselves. Step into a candlelit hall. Music hums softly, nobles chatter, goblets of wine glisten in the firelight. Across the room a lady sits poised, her gown shimmering like starlight. She does not speak, she does not even move much, yet all eyes seem drawn to her. What sorcery is this? Not magic exactly, but the ancient art of seduction. For noble ladies, seduction was not only about passion. It was survival, influence, even power. A well-placed glance, a carefully chosen scent, or the flutter of a fan could carry more weight than a dozen political arguments. In a world where women had little authority on paper, allure became their weapon. Perfumes played a part. Distilled from roses, lavender, or exotic spices, scents lingered as silent messengers. A trail of fragrance down a corridor might remind a man of her long after she had gone. Imagine a lady experimenting with mixtures, her maid wrinkling her nose as the chamber fills with overpowering musk, sometimes irresistible, sometimes less successful. Clothing, too, was carefully orchestrated. A low neckline whispered boldness, bright colors suggested confidence, embroidery carried secret messages. Roses for love, ivy for loyalty. Even hair was sculpted into elaborate towers or veils, designed not just to impress but to intrigue. But the true art was subtler. A look held half a second longer than expected, a hand resting lightly on a goblet, a laugh that seemed spontaneous but was perfectly timed. Seduction was theater, and these women were both actresses and directors. Of course, humor followed them. Imagine a lady trying to walk gracefully in shoes far too tight, only to wobble like a tipsy goose, or picture her batting her lashes so enthusiastically that her false lashes, yes, some experimented with them, fall into her soup. Even the best performances had bloopers, yet behind the laughter was longing. To be noticed, to feel desired in a world that treated them as pawns. Seduction was not only about luring men, It was about reclaiming agency, showing that they could stir hearts and minds without permission. Now pause and place yourself there. If you were her, seated in silk at the banquet table, would you master the glance, the perfume, the calculated smile? Would you use charm as shield and sword, or would you reject the performance, daring to show yourself plainly, without the careful mask, because for noble ladies, seduction was more than play, it was survival dressed as beauty. Silk rustles as a lady walks across her chamber. Golden bracelets jingle at her wrists, and a polished mirror reflects the glitter of her necklace. For a noble lady in the Middle Ages, wealth was not just comfort, it was identity. Every thread of silk, every gemstone told the world who she was. And more importantly, who she was not. The hunger for luxury was real. Exotic fabrics from the East, spices carried across deserts, pearls from distant seas, all were tokens of status. A lady draped in finery could command respect without uttering a word, yet beneath the shimmer lay an endless desire for more, for rarer, for better. Sumptuary laws often tried to curb this desire, dictating who could wear what. A countess might be forbidden from wearing cloth reserved for queens, but rules only fueled ambition. Imagine a lady bribing a merchant to smuggle her forbidden velvet, or sewing jewels into her headdress where no guard would dare check. The thrill was not just in possession, it was in defiance. And then there was the competition. At banquets, noble ladies scanned each other's gowns as carefully as knights sized up armor. A richer embroidery, a brighter jewel, a longer train, these were weapons in a silent war of elegance. The whispers were ruthless. Her pearls are fake, her gown is last season. Sound familiar? The fashion drama of the Middle Ages was not so different from today. Humor, too, had its place. Imagine a lady struggling to walk under the sheer weight of her jeweled gown, two maids carrying the fabric behind her like reluctant soldiers. Or picture her fainting dramatically, not from passion, but because her corset was tightened a little too enthusiastically. Luxury had its costs, and sometimes its comedy. But deeper still, the hunger for wealth was not vanity alone. For many noble women, possessions were armor. A lavish gown could disguise insecurity. A dazzling necklace could silence rivals. To be draped in gold was to declare, "I am untouchable." Their longing was not just for beauty, but for protection through opulence. So imagine yourself at that banquet table, silk flowing, jewels sparkling, rivals watching. Would you revel in the luxury, flaunting every gem? Or would you feel trapped by it, longing to shed the weight and walk barefoot through the grass, because for noble ladies wealth was both freedom and prison, a glittering cage they could neither escape nor resist. In the great halls of castles, noble ladies often sat side by side, their laughter polite, their compliments sweet, but beneath the velvet and jewels, friendships and rivalries twisted together like vines, nourishing, suffocating, and impossible to untangle. Friendship was precious. Life in isolation was lonely, and for many noble women, companionship came only from other women. They shared secrets, comforted each other in childbirth, and whispered confessions during long candlelit nights. To have a true friend meant survival of the soul. Imagine two ladies walking in a garden, their hands brushing as they lean close to share a joke, or writing letters filled with coded phrases. Knowing that courtiers might spy, these friendships could be tender, passionate, even rebellious. Sometimes they crossed into something deeper, affections that dared not be spoken, but friendship always walked beside rivalry. Castles were arenas of comparison. Who wore the finer gown, who captured the knight's glance, who bore airs first. A laugh at supper could hide a sting. A compliment could be a dagger wrapped in silk. The rivalry was often silent but sharp. Imagine a banquet where one lady unveils a new jeweled gown, only to see her friend's forced smile hide envy. Or a tournament where knights dedicate victories to one lady, while another seethes in silence. Every glance carried meaning, every gesture could wound. Of course, humor was part of it too. Picture a noble woman trying to outshine her rival by wearing an enormous headdress, so tall it gets stuck in a doorway. Or another bragging about her imported perfume, only for everyone to wrinkle their noses because she used too much. In these small failures, rivals found quiet joy. Yet beneath the competition, the longing was the same. Connection. Even rivals needed each other, because who else could understand the strange, gilded cage they lived in? A rival was also a mirror, reflecting desires, fears, and ambitions too dangerous to speak aloud. So, if you were there, would you seek the warmth of sisterhood, trusting another with your deepest fears, or would you sharpen your smile into a weapon, determined never to be overshadowed? For noble ladies, every friendship carried a question mark, and every rivalry carried a touch of love. It was a dangerous dance, half alliance, half duel, yet it made their silken lives bearable and sometimes unforgettable. The banquet is in full swing. Young ladies in bright gowns laugh, their eyes shining, their cheeks flushed with youth. At the edge of the hall sits an older noblewoman. Her gown no less fine, but her face lined, her hair streaked with gray. Once she was the center of every glance, now she feels the weight of invisibility. For noble ladies, aging was more than a natural process, it was a social sentence. A wrinkle could erase influence. Gray hair could mean being replaced. In a world obsessed with airs, beauty, and novelty, older women risked fading into the background long before their voices grew silent, yet the longing was not only for lost youth. It was for dignity. Many noble ladies wished simply to be respected for their wisdom, their endurance, their contributions. They wanted their stories to matter even after their beauty dimmed. Some fought back. They dyed their hair with strange concoctions, painted their faces white with powder, and wore gowns designed to rival their daughters. Others embraced a new role, becoming advisors, mentors, or even quiet power brokers in families. Behind closed doors, many older women wielded more authority than anyone admitted. Still, the sting of being overlooked never vanished. Imagine a grandmother watching her granddaughter receive all the attention she once enjoyed. She smiles, but inside a whisper aches. Will they remember me when I am gone? There is humor here too. Picture an older lady insisting on dancing at a feast, only to realize halfway through that her knees no longer obey. Or another scolding her servants for bringing the wrong herbal dye, leaving her hair tinted a suspicious shade of green, even in old age. Vanity found ways to surprise. But deeper than vanity was the desire to remain human in the eyes of others, to not be dismissed as irrelevant, to still be seen as more than a relic of the past. Their longing was not to be young again, but to age with respect. So now place yourself in her seat at the banquet. Would you cling to powders and dyes, fighting every wrinkle, or would you raise your chin, letting your lines tell stories of battles survived, loves endured, wisdom gained? Because in the end, for many noble ladies, the greatest wish was not immortality of body, but dignity of spirit. The library smells of parchment and ink. Heavy tomes line the shelves, guarded by monks who scowl at anyone daring to disturb their silence. Knowledge in the Middle Ages was precious, but also restricted, especially for women. For noble ladies, the hunger for learning was like thirst in a desert, constant, consuming, and often unsatisfied. Some were fortunate. Daughters of kings or dukes sometimes received tutors in languages, history, or music. They learned to read psalms, to compose poetry, even to correspond with other nobles. But the deeper wells, science, philosophy, theology, were locked away behind monastery doors. To reach them, women needed courage, cunning, and allies. Imagine a noble lady leaning over a manuscript, tracing letters by candlelight, her maid standing guard at the door. Every page was both treasure and danger. If caught studying beyond what was proper, she risked scandal, suspicion, even accusations of witchcraft. Yet still, the desire burned. Some turned to secret teachers, confessors willing to explain Latin texts, poets who slipped her verses, or even astrologers who disguised philosophy within star charts. Knowledge traveled in whispers, hidden in margins, woven into songs. Of course, humor found its place here too. Picture a lady smuggling a book under her gown, only to drop it mid-curtsy before the duke. Or imagine her trying to hide her notes inside a prayer book, only for a bored servant to notice and read them aloud, much to her horror. Even the pursuit of knowledge had its slapstick moments. But beneath the comedy was longing of the purest kind, to know, to understand, to question. For many women, this hunger was never satisfied. Their lives demanded obedience, not curiosity. Yet curiosity refused to die. It slipped into gardens where women discussed ideas, into embroidery patterns hiding coded messages, into lullabies that carried more than simple rhymes. And think of the irony. While men debated philosophy in Latin, women often carried the practical wisdom of medicine, herbs, and household management that truly kept families alive. Their learning was undervalued, yet essential. So now ask yourself, if you were her, denied the right to study, Would you obey, or would you sneak into the library, candle trembling in your hand? Just for one taste of forbidden knowledge, because for noble ladies, books were not just ink and parchment, they were freedom bound in leather, waiting to be stolen. The castle gates loom high, iron-bound and heavy. Guards pace back and forth, their footsteps echoing in rhythm. For most noble ladies, these gates were not just protection. They were prison bars. Behind them stretched a life of duty, etiquette, and endless observation. Beyond them lay freedom, unpredictable and thrilling. Escape was often only a fantasy. Some dreamed of vanishing into the forest, living like common folk, walking barefoot in the mud without scandal. Others longed for ships, for the taste of salt air, for voyages where no one cared about titles or dowries. In the silence of their chambers, they wove these dreams like tapestries in their minds. But sometimes fantasy became action. Stories whisper of noble ladies disguising themselves as peasants, slipping out with only a cloak and a handful of coins. Imagine the exhilaration of breathing air unfiltered by incense, of hearing laughter unmeasured by courtly etiquette. For one night, they could taste a world not written for them. Of course, danger lurked. A noble woman discovered outside her role could spark scandal, or worse, accusations of witchcraft or treason. Even stepping too far from her castle could mean risk of bandits or disease. The price of freedom was steep, but the temptation was stronger. And yes, humor had its way here too. Picture a lady trying to milk a cow for the first time on her escape, only to end up soaked and chased by the angry animal. Or imagine her attempting to buy bread, baffled when the baker laughs because she tries to pay with a gemstone. Even rebellion had its slapstick. Yet beneath the comedy lay a profound truth, the longing to be more than a title. Escape was not just about fleeing a place. It was about fleeing expectations. These women yearned to discover who they were without crowns, without gowns, without rules scripted by men. Now pause and ask yourself, if you were her, standing by the barred gate, heart pounding, would you dare to slip past the guards? Would you risk everything for one night of authenticity? Or would you stay within the safety of stone walls, forever wondering what the world beyond might have held? Because for many noble ladies, their greatest journeys happened not on roads or seas, but in the silent rebellion of their dreams. A quill scratches softly against parchment. The candlelight flickers, shadows dancing as a noble lady bends over her writing desk. Her words flow not for the chroniclers, not for the priests, but for herself, or for someone she dares not name. In an age when women's voices were often silenced, letters and poetry became their refuge. For many noble ladies, writing was the only space where they could be fully honest. They poured fears, longings, and passions into ink. Some wrote prayers, others confessions, and some penned love poems too dangerous to ever read aloud. Words were wings, carrying them beyond castle walls. Imagine a lady slipping a folded letter into the hand of a trusted maid, her pulse racing as it travels secretly to a forbidden lover. Or picture her hiding her verses inside a prayer book, disguised as devotion but burning with desire. Writing was rebellion, disguised as ink. Of course, secrecy made it thrilling. Every letter risked interception. Every poem could betray too much. A misplaced parchment might spark scandal, even ruin. Yet still they wrote, because silence was heavier than danger. And yes, humor found its way here too. Imagine a love poem written with such dramatic flair that even the maid bursts out laughing before delivering it. Or a lady misusing rhymes so poorly that her ode to passion accidentally sounds like a recipe for stew. Even the most secret hearts sometimes stumbled into comedy. But deeper than the laughter was power. Words gave noble ladies what society denied, a voice. In letters they could criticize politics, express forbidden love, or dream aloud of freedom. Some of these writings survived, testaments to women who refused to vanish into silence. Now pause and imagine yourself in her place. The ink stains your fingers, the page glows under candlelight. Do you write boldly, letting your heart spill out? Or do you hesitate, fearing discovery, your words locked forever in your mind? Because for many noble ladies, ink was not just ink, it was life itself. Hidden words carved their existence into history, even when the world tried to erase them. The bells of the village ring wildly, and the streets explode with color. Masks, drums, jugglers, wine flowing faster than water. This is not the solemn world of castles and chapels. This is carnival, where the rules are suspended, where even noble ladies might dare to peek from balconies or slip into the crowd. For many women, these festivals were both terrifying and thrilling. On one hand, they were chaotic, filled with drunken revelers, bawdy songs, and masks that hid more than faces. On the other hand, they were freedom incarnate. For a few nights, peasants mocked lords, fools became kings, and the body, normally restrained by etiquette, was celebrated in all its wildness. Imagine a noble lady at the edge of the festival, her hood pulled low. She watches dancers twirl until their skirts flare like fire. She smells roasted meats, hears laughter too loud for court, sees men and women embracing without shame. A part of her recoils, another part aches to join. Some did. Disguised and cloaked, noble women slipped into the throng, their silk gowns traded for rougher cloth. They drank spiced wine, clapped to unruly songs, maybe even danced with strangers. For once they were not my lady, they were anonymous, free and alive. Of course, danger lurked. Discovery meant scandal. And the raw physicality of carnival, the press of bodies, the loosened morals was risky. But that was the point. Desire thrives where danger lingers. And yes, humor was always near. Picture a lady trying to eat a greasy meat skewer, only to smear oil all over her veil. Or another so unpracticed at folk dances that she spins the wrong way, knocking into a juggler and sending his torches flying. Freedom was messy, but often hilarious. At its core, the longing was not just for wine or laughter. It was for release, to escape the tight corset of etiquette, to let the body lead for once, to feel joy without judgment. Carnival was not just spectacle, it was rebellion against silence and restraint. So ask yourself, if you were her, standing at the edge of chaos, would you stay hidden behind your hood, or would you step forward, let the drums guide your body, and lose yourself in a night where no one asked your name? Because for many noble ladies, carnival was more than a festival. It was the dream of being human, unmasked, unbound, and unapologetically alive. The wedding banners flutter, music fills the hall, and two families celebrate. But at the center of it all, the bride, a noble lady, stands with a heart divided. Her marriage is not born of love, but of strategy, property, and alliances. Such was the fate of many noble women in the Middle Ages, their hearts traded like coins on a table. And yet the human spirit resists chains. Many noble ladies longed not for titles or estates, but for affection, love freely given, not calculated. They wanted tenderness, laughter, passion, and the kind of companionship ballads promised but reality denied. Imagine a young lady hearing a troubadour sing of star-crossed lovers. Her cheeks flush, not from the fire but from longing. She glances at her husband, older, distant, more concerned with politics than poetry. In that moment her heart whispers, what if love could be real? Some pursued it in secret. Letters passed under doors, glances exchanged at tournaments, midnight trysts in gardens. These romances were dangerous. For discovery meant ruin, or worse. But danger only sharpened desire. To risk everything for a kiss made the kiss eternal. Others settled for dreams. They wrote poetry, embroidered hidden hearts into gowns, or poured affection into children when love from husbands never came. Their longing became art, weaving invisible threads into the culture of their time. And yes, humor softened even forbidden love. Picture a lady sneaking to meet her lover, only to trip on her gown and tumble into a rose bush, emerging with scratches and a very unromantic look. Or imagine a secret letter accidentally delivered to the wrong night, sparking chaos at supper. Even passion had its pratfalls, but beneath the laughter was something undeniable. Love was survival of the soul. Without it, noble ladies risked becoming hollow, defined only by duty. With it, even if only in secret, they felt alive, human, and whole. So place yourself in her shoes, bound by marriage contracts, watched by servants, weighed down by duty. Would you risk everything for true love? Would you dare the scandal, the danger, the heartbreak? Or would you silence your heart, surviving in duty but starving in spirit, because for noble ladies, true love was more than romance, it was rebellion. The stone effigies of noble ladies lie on tombs, hands folded, eyes carved upward in eternal prayer. Their names are etched in Latin, their titles preserved in marble. Yet behind the stone, behind the titles, a question lingers. What will remain of me when I am gone? For noble ladies, legacy was more than heirs and dowries. It was the hunger to be remembered as more than wife of or mother of. They longed for their stories, their choices, their voices to survive, but history often muted them, leaving only shadows of who they truly were. Some fought back through patronage. They sponsored churches, hospitals, and monasteries, etching their names into stained glass and carved plaques. Others left marks in art, commissioning tapestries, portraits, and manuscripts. These works became whispers across centuries. I was here. I mattered. Imagine a noblewoman saving coins secretly to fund a chapel in her name, her eyes shining when the first stone is laid, or another dictating her memoirs to a scribe, her words carefully chosen, knowing they may outlive her body. Each act was rebellion against erasure. Of course, not every attempt succeeded. Fires destroyed chapels, tapestries unraveled, names were forgotten. But the desire itself was powerful. Even when erased, the effort proved they refused to vanish quietly. And yes, legacy had its comic turns. Picture a lady demanding a grand tomb with angels and trumpets carved in stone, only for the sculptor to give the angels oddly silly faces. Or imagine her instructing her children to remember her noble wisdom, only for them to laugh years later at how she once fainted because her wig was too heavy. Memory is never as tidy as one hopes. But deeper than pride was a yearning for immortality, not of flesh, but of meaning. These women wanted the world to know they had lived, struggled, loved, and dreamed. They wanted proof that their existence was more than a footnote in their husband's story. So ask yourself, if you were her, gazing at your reflection, knowing time is short, how would you shape your legacy? Through art, through children, through rebellion, or through words? Because for noble ladies, legacy was more than remembrance. It was the final cry, I was here and I mattered. In the throne room, men argue loudly, lords, knights, clerics. Their voices clash like swords, each one demanding to be heard. And there, at the edge of the chamber, sits a noble lady. She says little. She smiles politely. Yet beneath the silence, her mind works like a strategist's map. Because even without a throne, she longs for control. For many noble women, power was denied openly. They could not lead armies, rule councils, or write laws. But denial did not kill ambition. Instead, it taught subtlety. Power found its way through whispers, influence, and persuasion. Imagine a lady advising her husband before a meeting, planting ideas he would later present as his own, or guiding her son toward alliances that would outlast her. Some even wielded influence over kings, their charm and cunning shaping wars and treaties. The methods varied: gifts, flattery, threats veiled as kindness, secrets whispered at the right time. Some women controlled households so vast they rivaled estates. Others ran correspondence networks, trading information more valuable than gold. Power wore many disguises. Of course, humor threaded through. Picture a noble lady slyly convincing her husband to support her cousin's marriage, only for him to later boast it was his idea all along. Or imagine her pretending to be disinterested in politics while secretly keeping better records of taxes than the steward himself. Sometimes, control looked like a joke, but the joke was on those who underestimated her. Beneath it all, the longing was clear: to matter, to steer her world instead of drifting in it. For many noble ladies, control was not about crowns. It was about survival. Without influence, they risked being pawns. With it, they could become players. So imagine yourself in her seat, quiet at the edge of the hall. Would you accept invisibility, letting men argue while you watched? Or would you weave words like threads, pulling strings none could see, steering outcomes without anyone realizing? Because for noble ladies, control was never given, it was taken, silently, cleverly, and with unshakable resolve. The night sky stretched endless, stars burning like scattered diamonds. In their chambers, noble ladies often gazed upward, wondering if destiny was written among the constellations. The church warned against superstition, yet curiosity pulled them toward whispers of magic, alchemy, and forbidden charms. For many, magic was not simply play, it was hope. When medicine failed, when politics suffocated, when love betrayed, the thought of a spell offered possibility. A whispered incantation, a charm sewn into a gown, a potion brewed at midnight, all carried the promise of bending fate, even if only slightly. Imagine a noble lady consulting an astrologer in secret, her heart racing as he charts her stars. She listens eagerly, searching for signs of love, children, or power. Or picture her clutching a talisman hidden under her dress, believing it might protect her through childbirth. For these women, magic was less about rebellion, more about survival. And yes, there was humor too. Picture a lady brewing a love potion only for her cat to lap it up and promptly fall asleep for a day. Or another whispering an incantation with such seriousness, only to sneeze halfway through, ruining the spell. Magic often looked more clumsy than mysterious. But beneath the comedy was longing for the impossible, to escape the limits of stone walls and strict rules, to reach for something greater, stranger, freer. Fantasy gave noble ladies what reality denied: control over fate, even if imagined. Some turned to stories instead, tales of saints who performed miracles, or romances filled with enchanted forests and fairy queens. These narratives became their refuge, a place where women could wield swords, ride dragons, or speak with spirits without fear of scandal. So now ask yourself, if you were her, sitting beneath the stars, would you trust the sermons that told you magic was sin, or would you dare to clutch the charm, whisper the spell, and dream of a world where impossible things might just come true? Because for noble ladies, fantasy was not foolishness. It was the secret language of hope. The castle at night is silent. The torches burn low, the courtyard's empty, and in a quiet chamber a noble lady sits by her window. She gazes out into the darkness, past the walls, past the guards, past everything that held her life in chains. In that silence her final longing takes shape: freedom. Not the freedom of festivals or stolen letters. Not even the freedom of romance or hidden knowledge. This longing is deeper, quieter, and sharper. It is the wish to live as herself, without masks, without duties, without fear. For some, this freedom came only in imagination. They dreamed of riding a horse into the wild, of shedding gowns and jewels, of walking nameless among strangers. For others, freedom meant the chance to speak openly, to let their voices ring without punishment. Imagine her writing one last letter, not to a lover or priest, but to herself. She writes of her life, of joys, sorrows, mistakes, and dreams never fulfilled. She seals it, hides it in a wall, hoping that someday someone might read it and know she was more than titles. And yes, even in this solemn longing, humor flickered. Picture a lady announcing she wanted to be free of her corset forever, only to sigh in relief when her maid loosened the laces. Or imagine her whispering that her greatest dream was simply to nap without being woken for prayers or duties. Sometimes freedom was not grand. It was simply peace, but beneath the small jokes was truth. Noble ladies carried centuries of silence. Their secrets filled the walls of castles, their whispers lost to time, yet their longing was universal, the desire to live unchained. So place yourself in her final moment by the window. Would you dream of escape into forests, of voyages across seas, of songs sung loudly in forbidden halls? Or would you dream simply of being seen, truly seen, without disguise? Because in the end, what noble ladies really wanted in the Middle Ages was not just wealth, or beauty, or even love. It was freedom, the one treasure rarer than gold, and the one desire that still echoes even now. And so our journey through the hidden desires of noble ladies in the Middle Ages comes to an end. We have walked with them through banquets and bedrooms, through fears, laughter, secrets, and longings that stretched far beyond their gilded cages. If there is one truth to take with you tonight, it is this: they were not just portraits in stone, or names in dusty chronicles. They were women who dreamed, who feared, who laughed, who loved, and above all, who longed for freedom in a world that rarely allowed it. Before you drift into sleep, I want to thank you for joining me on this long and winding path. Your presence here gives these forgotten voices a chance to be heard again. Now I would love to hear from you. Which part of this journey touched you the most? Was it their longing for love, their secret rebellions, or their dreams of freedom? And what would you like to explore with me next? Perhaps the secret lives of medieval knights, or the strange superstitions that shaped an entire age. Take a moment to leave your thoughts in the comments. I read every one, and your ideas shape the stories to come. And if you have not already, please remember to like this video, tell me where you are watching from, and subscribe to the channel so you do not miss our next journey into the mysteries of history. For now, close your eyes, let the echoes of their whispers fade into the night, and carry with you this truth. History is never just about kings and wars, it is also about the hidden dreams of those who dared to want more. Good night, my friend. Until next time.